James shot some lovely footage down by the river. Unfortunately, you couldn't hear him as the wind was very strong.
Just to talk a little bit about the actual marathon training cycle, the different phases that you go through. I found that marathon training and endurance training is very much an individual thing. If you're doing this for the first time, there's a lot of trial and error. Essentially, you want to try and get your body in as good a shape as possible, doing as many miles as possible without putting yourself in the red zone or getting injured. It's one of those things that you can build on. I mean, I'm now looking at my 5th marathon training cycle and hopefully doing my 5th marathon. And I can see the evolution and how I've evolved and how much stronger I am. This time my marathon training program just incorporates different things. Yes, there's a huge amount of endurance running because it's an endurance event, but I'm doing lots more speed work and just runs that will get me and my body used to running at the pace I want to run, hopefully run the event at. The first part of it, and again this all comes down to how experienced you are, how much you've done, but the first part of it is generally 4 to 6 weeks is your base building, where you're going out running 4, 5, 6 times a week, again depending on experience, and it's just getting you used to that volume, getting the miles in your legs, and just getting you used to running pretty much every day. The second part will then, again, we can kind of break it down into 4 or 5 week chunks. The second part of it you'll start to add speed work, tempo work. You should be using something like a race pace calculator. This is the one I use, it's very good. You'll start to add runs at different tempos, so you need to work out, be very realistic here, what you're aiming to run the marathon in. Then you can start to chunk up some of your training runs, so that for instance you'll do an hour at a steady pace, and then you'll do half an hour at your marathon training pace, and then sort of a 10-15 minute warm down, something like that. That's a pretty standard longish run. This is something that I've certainly learned over training cycles, that those long runs where say you're out for 2.5 hours, just adding sort of 20-30 minute blocks at marathon tempo pace just gets you acclimatized. It obviously gets your body and your mind to understand the demands that we placed on you on the day. The third part of the training cycle, there's 2 or 3 really sort of big long weeks where you'll do the Sunday run, or the long run will be your longest runs, so building up for 3 hours, maybe at least 20 miles, and they'll be your longest runs before the event. The first time you go out there running for 2 or 3 hours, it's a long time on your feet, and you have to get used to things like refueling, and you have to take water and gels and things like that with you. So all this is very new, and it gets you kind of a little bit more tuned into what you can expect on the day. And they're long weeks, they're long training weeks. You'll do your mileage will really ramp up. It's also important during these long weeks, try and do as much as you can to recover. I mean, throughout your training program, try and do as much as you can to recover. If you're a little bit older, say, I mean, I'm in my mid-40s, so I never do, if I've got a hard day, say I do a long run Sunday, the Monday, if it's a rest day, generally a rest day during the training cycle, if I was running the next day, it would be just at a very easy pace, I'm putting no stress from my body, just to allow myself to really recover, so the next day I'm as recovered as I can be for the next session. And at the end of that, we come to the taper, which is the last 3 or 4 weeks before the event, which is really important to allow all the training that you've done to really bed in and settle down. So you just reduce the amount of mileage and training that you're doing, not necessarily the intensity, but just the mileage will start to come down, so that by race day you're absolutely in tip-top condition and ready to roll. I'll do very much a separate video on the taper, because it's certainly the first 2 or 3 times you do it. I mean, I'm not sure anyone likes the taper, to be honest. It's kind of a weird, you've done all this training and suddenly you start to reduce it, and you can start to feel a bit sluggish. I'll go into that much more near the time, and it's going to start soon. We're only literally a week away, so yeah, exciting times, good stuff. Keep on!